I don't usually talk about this night, mostly because when I do, people just tilt their heads and give me that look that says, "Are you sure you weren't just dreaming?" But I know what I experienced. It happened when I was 16, on one of those nights where the rain doesn't just fall, it pours. A torrential, unrelenting downpour that drowned out every other sound in the world and made the whole house feel like it was floating in an endless sea. I grew up in a small town just outside of Seattle. My dad was out of town for work, and my mom was working a night shift at the hospital. She was a nurse. That meant I had the house to myself, something I used to look forward to. I would usually make some popcorn, binge horror movies, or mess around on my laptop until I passed out on the couch. That night, however, I didn't feel like doing any of that. There was something weird about the atmosphere, like the air was heavier, or maybe it was just the sound of the rain pressing in on every window, like it was trying to get in. Around 11:30 p.m., the power went out. Now, losing power in our house during storms wasn't unusual. The neighborhood had old transformers and a weak grid, so I wasn't surprised. I grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer and sat in the living room, watching the rain hammer down the windows with a kind of hypnotic rhythm. That's when I heard it. A knock. Just one. Sharp, slow, deliberate. It came from the back door, the one that leads to our backyard. At first I thought maybe it was a branch or something falling against the glass. But then it came again. Another knock, and then another. 3 knocks in total, evenly spaced. My body froze. I didn't move for a full minute. No one ever came to our back door. We had a gate that was always locked, and the backyard was fenced in from all sides. I told myself it could just be the storm, that maybe something was blown into it. But when I worked up the courage and shined my flashlight toward the kitchen, which had a partial view of the back door through the dining room, I saw it. A shadow. A full silhouette of someone standing just outside the glass. Not moving, not knocking, just standing. I couldn't make out a face, but the shape was unmistakable. A person, maybe 6 feet tall, lean, wearing what looked like a hood or maybe a jacket with a raised collar. The flashlight in my hand started to tremble, and the beam danced against the walls like it was alive. I stepped back. My heart was slamming in my chest so loud I could barely hear the rain anymore. I reached for my phone. No signal. Of course, the storm must have knocked out a tower or something. I had no way of calling anyone. Then I heard the kitchen door creak. Not the knock this time. A creak, as if it was slowly being opened. But that door was always locked. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. I held the flashlight like a weapon and slowly walked toward the kitchen. Each step felt like my feet were sinking into concrete. When I reached the edge of the hallway and peeked in, the door was closed, still locked. No one was there, but there had been someone. I know what I saw. I stood there, confused and terrified, trying to listen over the sound of the storm. I couldn't hear footsteps, no creaking floorboards, nothing. But then, something even worse happened. I smelled something. It was this strange scent, like wet dirt mixed with something metallic, almost like blood. Faint, but unmistakable. And it was inside the house, not outside, inside. I turned around and shined the flashlight down the hallway toward my room. And that's when I saw muddy footprints, fresh ones, leading from the back door, across the kitchen floor, and straight down the hallway, toward my bedroom. I swear to God, my entire body locked up. It was like my mind couldn't process what it was seeing. The footprints were big, barefoot, and soaked through, leaving behind smudges of dirt and rainwater, and they didn't come from the outside. Number. They started from the hallway, as if Someone had been inside already and had walked toward the back door, but I had been in the living room the whole time. No one passed me. No one left. I should have heard something. A door, a footstep, anything. The footprints stopped just before my bedroom door. I didn't know what else to do. I ran outside, into the rain, barefoot, not even grabbing a coat. I just ran to my neighbor's house across the street and banged on their door until they opened it. I didn't care how crazy I looked or sounded. When they came back with me 10 minutes later, my house was quiet. The footprints were gone. No wet floor, no smell, no silhouette, nothing. But the door, it was unlocked. We had it checked the next day. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of anyone being inside. The cops chalked it up to weather stress and maybe a trick of the storm. But I know what I saw. I felt that presence. Someone was in my house that night. Someone or something that left no trace. But it saw me, and I think it wanted me to see it too. After that night, something inside me changed. I couldn't explain it fully, but it was like a part of me had been rewired, like my body had stored that fear in some deep, primal place. I stopped sleeping in my room entirely. For the next few weeks, I'd either crash on the couch or stay over at a friend's house whenever I could. My mom said it was just a reaction to being alone during the storm, but it wasn't that. It was something deeper, something that followed me even in daylight. I didn't tell her about the footprints. I couldn't. Part of me was terrified that saying it out loud would somehow make it more real, would invite it back. But I knew what I saw, and that smell, that damp, coppery smell, lingered in my nostrils for days. I even tried spraying my room with disinfectants and lighting candles, but nothing worked. The smell wasn't physical. It was like it had imprinted itself onto my memory. The nightmares started shortly after. At first they were vague, shadows moving at the edge of my vision, a feeling of being watched, doors creaking in the distance. But then they got worse, much worse. I'd wake up in my dream, lying in bed, paralyzed. The room around me would be dimly lit, just enough to see the outlines of the furniture. I'd hear footsteps coming down the hall, slow, wet, dragging, and then the doorknob would start to turn. Not quickly, but slowly, like whoever was behind the door wanted me to hear it, wanted me to panic, and then the door would open, and there would be nothing there, but I'd feel it, that cold breath on my face, the weight pressing down on my chest, and then I'd wake up, soaked in sweat, my heart punching through my ribs like it was trying to escape. I tried to convince myself it was just trauma, that my brain was playing tricks on me. But then something happened that made me realize it wasn't just in my head. One night, maybe 3 weeks after the incident, I was sleeping over at my friend Jeremy's house. He had one of those basements that had been converted into a gaming lounge. Big couch, TV, mini fridge. It was our go-to hangout. That night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to use the bathroom. Jeremy was snoring on the other side of the room. As I stepped out into the hallway, I heard a knock. 3 knocks. Even, deliberate, familiar. I froze. The knocks weren't coming from the front door. They were coming from the basement door, the one that led to the stairs going up to the kitchen. I stared at it, heart climbing into my throat. Then came the sound of it turning. The door handle jiggled once, then silence. I backed away slowly, trying not to make a sound. My mind was racing. I hadn't told Jeremy about the knocks. I hadn't told anyone. But somehow, whatever this thing was, it had followed me. I backed into the room and locked the door. When Jeremy woke up the next morning, I was sitting on the floor, facing the door with a kitchen knife in my hand. I told him I thought I heard someone trying to break in. He laughed it off. but I could tell he was a little freaked out, too. We checked the house, but nothing was disturbed. No signs of entry, no mud, no wet footprints. But I knew what I heard. From that point on, it didn't just appear at my house. Wherever I went, it followed. Sometimes it was just a knock. Sometimes it was the smell. Once I swore I saw its reflection in a window, standing just behind me. Always still, always watching, never attacking, just there. I started digging. I needed to know if this had happened to anyone else. I searched forums, horror threads, anything that even remotely sounded similar. That's when I came across a thread buried deep in an old paranormal message board. The post was from a guy who said he grew up in a town just 30 minutes from mine. He described the exact same thing. Power outage during a storm, silhouette at the back door, muddy footprints, the smell of copper and soil. He called it the waiting man. According to him, it was something ancient, a presence that didn't just haunt a place. It haunted people. It watched. It waited. And when it knew you were most vulnerable, it showed itself, but never fully. It never needed to. It only needed you to remember. The man in the post ended his story by saying something that chilled me to the bone. You'll know he's near when the smell returns, when the lights flicker, when your dreams start to feel more like memories. But whatever you do, don't open the door. Don't acknowledge him. And for the love of God, never answer the knock. That post was dated 2004. There were no replies. The user who posted it was deleted. But somehow, I felt like he was speaking directly to me. And then I realized something even worse. My bedroom? It had no external door. But ever since that night, I'd been hearing knocks inside my house. Not just from outside, from inside. And sometimes, they came from inside my closet. I wish I could tell you that things got better after that, that I found a way to stop it, or at least escape it. But the truth is, it got worse. Much worse. After reading that forum post, I started to become obsessed. Every night before bed, I'd check all the locks in the house. Not once, not twice, but sometimes 5 or 6 times. I even started sleeping with the closet door duct-taped shut. My mom thought I was spiraling into some kind of mental breakdown. And honestly, maybe I was. But at least my breakdown had a name. The waiting man. I couldn't stop thinking about it. About him. That night with the footprints, the smell, the sound of the doorknob turning. It wasn't just a one-off event. It was an invitation, or worse, a claim. And now, every time I found myself alone, I'd feel it. That unmistakable sensation of being watched. Like there were eyes in the shadows, peering through cracks in the walls, in the mirror, in the closet slats. Anywhere there was just enough space to hide a presence. But what happened on the 3rd week was the breaking point. It was a Thursday evening. Rain again, not as violent as the first storm, but persistent, tapping on the windows like impatient fingers. My mom had gone to visit her sister across town, leaving me home alone. I had my phone, a bat beside the bed, and all the lights on. It didn't matter. Around 10:42 p.m., I remember because I glanced at the clock in pure dread. The power cut out again. Darkness. I sat in my bed, holding my phone like a lifeline, too scared to even move. I don't know why, but I knew what was coming, and then I heard it. Not from the back door, not from the hall, but from inside the room. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. The sound didn't come from the window or the wall. It came from behind me, from inside the closet, the same closet I had duct-taped earlier that evening. I turned slowly, phone flashlight trembling in my hand. The tape had been ripped off. It didn't look like it had peeled. It had been yanked, violently, like someone or something had clawed its way out. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. And then, the closet door creaked open, just an inch. Then another, just wide enough to see blackness within. No shape, no silhouette, just an endless pulsing void. And then something stepped out. I can't describe it fully. My mind won't let me. It was tall, impossibly tall. So tall its head should have hit the ceiling, but it didn't. It had no eyes, but I could feel it looking at me. Its skin looked like damp wood or decaying leather, and it didn't walk. It floated, no sound, no movement, just there. And then it spoke. Not aloud, not with a mouth. It spoke inside my head. You opened the door. The voice was ancient, cold, not angry, disappointed. It drifted closer. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was paralyzed. I was inside the nightmare again. Only this time, I wasn't dreaming. You let me in. I remember dropping the phone. The flashlight rolled to the side, its beam slicing across the room. And that's when I saw the footprints. Fresh, wet, muddy, leading from the closet across the room to me. I fainted. I don't remember the fall, just darkness, and that smell, stronger than ever, like rust and rotting leaves, like the inside of a coffin. When I woke up, it was morning. Sunlight poured through the windows. My mom was back. Everything looked normal, except there was a single muddy footprint at the edge of my bed. From that day on, I wasn't the same. I started forgetting things. My grades slipped. I'd lose hours, entire blocks of time, without remembering what I did or where I went. I'd find myself standing in rooms I didn't remember entering. Sometimes I'd wake up with scratches on my arms or mud under my fingernails. Once, I found a dead bird on my pillow, its neck twisted, its eyes missing. My mom thought I needed help. She took me to therapy, then to a neurologist. They found nothing. Clean scans, no trauma, no illness. But I knew the truth. I had opened the door. I had answered the knock. The waiting man was inside me now, and he wasn't leaving. I tried everything. Salt lines, burning sage, praying. I even contacted a priest at one point, who refused to enter the house after standing at the threshold for 5 minutes. He said, and I quote, "There is something here that doesn't belong." And it never did. Eventually, I moved out. College was a temporary escape. I stayed in a dorm with roommates, bright lights, and people always nearby. For a while, I thought maybe it was over. Maybe I'd left him behind. Until one night, sophomore year. My roommate had gone home for the weekend. I was alone. It started raining. And then, knock, knock, knock. Not from the door, not from the hall, from under the bed. That's when I knew. It wasn't the house. It wasn't the closet. It was me. I don't know what he wants. He never attacks, never speaks again, just watches, follows, waits. But sometimes, when I'm almost asleep, I hear that voice again. Soft, distant, like it's inside the walls of my skull. You let me in. And I know someday, maybe soon, he'll stop waiting. And I'll finally find out what happens when he no longer needs to knock. When I was 16, my best friend's older brother Josh disappeared during a weekend hiking trip in the Catskills. He was 21, confident, outdoorsy, ex-military type. The kind of guy you'd never expect to vanish without a trace. He knew those woods better than anyone. He'd hiked them a dozen times. So when he didn't come back that Sunday evening, people panicked. But that's not the disturbing part. The real horror started 2 weeks later, when he came back. I haven't talked about this in years. Not to my parents, not to my therapist, not even to my best friend, Ryan. Josh's little brother. But the memory eats at me. There's a pit in my stomach every time I hear a twig snap in the woods, every time it rains, every time I see someone staring too long without blinking. It's time to finally share what happened. The weekend Josh disappeared, I was staying over at Ryan's place. His family owned this big old farmhouse at the edge of a small town in upstate New York. We were gaming in the basement when their mom got the call. Josh had gone camping alone, said he needed a break, some mental reset after a recent breakup. He was supposed to be back Sunday morning. The ranger who found his abandoned camp said it looked like he'd just stepped away. Half-eaten trail mix on the log, tent zipped shut, flashlight still on. But his phone was there, his shoes were there, and there were no tracks leading away. Just nothing. The search lasted 5 days. Helicopters, dogs, volunteers, nothing turned up. They called it off and told the family to prepare for the worst. I remember Ryan crying that night, hugging his knees on his bed, while the wind howled outside. I didn't know what to say. I kept telling him maybe Josh got lost. Maybe he'd show up in town. We even joked, in that way stupid teenagers do when we're scared, that maybe he just ran off to get away from everyone. But then 2 weeks later, he came back. It was a Thursday night. I was at home when I got the call. "Dude," Ryan's voice was shaking. "He's here. Josh. He just walked up the driveway." I drove over without telling my parents. Didn't even think twice. When I got there, the house was lit up like a crime scene. Cops, an ambulance, 2 paramedics. I saw Ryan sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring straight ahead like he was watching something I couldn't see. I walked up slowly. "Where is he?" Ryan didn't answer. He just pointed inside. Josh was sitting at the kitchen table. Same building, same buzz cut, same tattoo on his left arm. But the moment I saw his eyes, I knew something was wrong. He didn't blink. Not once. He just stared at the table, like he was reading something written on the wood. His skin was pale. Not like sick pale, but bloodless. Like he hadn't seen sunlight in years. And his nails, they were longer, yellowed at the tips. His lips were cracked, almost bluish. But the thing that really made my stomach twist, he didn't talk. Not even to his mom. Not when the cops questioned him. Not when the EMTs tried to get a response. He just sat there, silent, watching. I asked Ryan later what had happened. He said Josh had just shown up at the end of the driveway, barefoot and soaked to the bone, like he'd walked out of the forest in a thunderstorm. No ID, no bag, nothing. He didn't knock, didn't ring the bell. Just stood there until Ryan's dad opened the door. When they asked where he'd been, Josh whispered one word: "Underneath." The next few days were surreal. The doctors ran tests, found no trauma, no injuries, no signs of starvation or exposure, which made no sense because he'd been gone over 2 weeks in near-freezing temperatures. Ryan tried to joke about it, said maybe Josh had joined some weird cult, or maybe it was an elaborate prank. But I could tell he was scared, really scared. I was too, because Josh didn't act like Josh. He didn't move like him. His motions were too smooth, like he was mimicking human behavior. He'd sit in the living room, not watching TV, not reading, just staring at walls. Sometimes I'd catch him in the hallway, just standing there, perfectly still, with his head tilted slightly like he was listening to something no one else could hear. And he started doing this thing at night. He'd stand outside Ryan's room, just stand there, for hours, silent, breathing shallow, staring. Ryan started locking his door. He barely slept. After the 4th night, he begged me to come over and stay the weekend. We slept in sleeping bags on his floor, whispering like we were kids again. We tried to convince ourselves it was stress, PTSD, something that made sense, something that could be explained, until Saturday night. It was around 3 a.m. I heard something scraping down the hallway. Not footsteps, not breathing, scraping, like nails or wood dragging slowly across drywall. I sat up. Ryan was already awake. His eyes were wide open, face pale in the moonlight. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. I nodded. We listened. The sound got closer. Scrape, drag, scrape. Then it stopped, right outside the door. We held our breath. And then, the doorknob started to turn. Slow, deliberate. Click. Ryan lunged forward and locked it. Then silence. No footsteps, no movement. Just silence. We didn't sleep after that. In the morning, we found long scratch marks on the outside of the door. Not just one or two. Dozens. Like something had been digging at it with fingers or claws. Ryan's parents didn't believe us. Said it was probably a cat or some old damage. We both knew better. That night, I had a dream. In it, I was standing in the woods, alone, and I heard a voice whisper from beneath the leaves, "He is not your friend's brother anymore." I turned and saw something crawling out of the earth. Not walking, crawling, like it had no bones. It looked like Josh, but wrong. Too thin, too long. Its face stretched in a grin that nearly split its skull in half. When I woke up, my phone had 3 new photos in the camera roll. I hadn't taken them. Each one was of me, sleeping, from inside Ryan's room. The last one, it was taken from inches above my face, and in the corner, you could see fingertips around the frame. Pale, long-nailed, not mine. This was just the beginning. And whatever that thing was that came back wearing Josh's skin, it wasn't done with us yet. I didn't tell Ryan about the photos at first. What could I say? "Hey man, your brother, or whatever that thing is, might have been standing over me while I slept, and also used my phone to take pictures of it." It sounded insane. But I couldn't delete them either. I needed proof, evidence, something to remind myself I wasn't just losing it. The day after I found them, I went home. Told Ryan I had a project due. He didn't argue. He barely even responded. He was getting pale, too, like Josh. Big dark circles under his eyes. He hadn't been sleeping, and I could tell something inside him was cracking. Back at my house, I locked my door, slept with the lights on, tried to pretend I'd left the nightmare behind at Ryan's farmhouse. But that was a lie. The thing wasn't just in their house anymore. 3 days later, something followed me home. It started with small things. A weird smell in my room, like damp earth and rotting wood. The overhead light would flicker even when I changed the bulb. My dog, Charlie, refused to come upstairs. He'd just sit at the bottom of the staircase, growling softly, eyes fixed on the hallway. Then I found a long black hair on my pillow. No one in my family has black hair. The next night, I woke up to find my closet door open. I always close it before sleeping, always. But now it was cracked 2 inches, just enough for darkness to spill out like a shadow bleeding into the room. When I worked up the nerve to check inside, nothing. Just that same damp, earthy smell. And then I noticed something on the carpet. A single, bare footprint. Too large to be mine. Too wet to make sense. It was like someone had stepped out of the woods and into my house. That weekend, Ryan texted me. Just one line. "I need to get out of here." I didn't ask questions. I just told him to come over. When he arrived, he looked like he hadn't slept in days. Hair greasy, eyes red-rimmed. He was carrying a backpack and something wrapped in a bedsheet. I asked what it was. He unwrapped it and showed me. A knife, a hunting knife. It had dried blood crusted along the edge. I stepped back. "What the hell, Ryan?" "I stabbed him," he whispered, "last night, in the arm." "You what?" "I had to." He was standing over my bed, not saying anything, just watching. I screamed. He didn't flinch. I grabbed the knife from my nightstand and stabbed him, right here. He pointed to his own forearm. "Did it stop him?" Ryan shook his head slowly. He looked at me and smiled. Then he walked backward out of the room, never turned around, just walked backward like a spider or something. I felt sick. Ryan pulled up his sleeve. There were bruises, finger-shaped, around his wrist, as if someone had grabbed him hard. We sat in silence for a while. Then I asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Do you think it's really Josh?" Ryan didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "I don't know what came back from those woods, but it's not my brother. It wears his skin, uses his voice sometimes, but it doesn't eat, doesn't blink, and at night." He looked up at me, terrified. "It talks to itself." That night, we made a plan. Ryan couldn't stay at home anymore, and whatever was haunting us, it needed to end. We decided to go back to the Catskills, back to the place where Josh disappeared. Maybe there were answers there. Maybe we'd find something the search team missed. A clue, a sign, anything. We packed food, flashlights, spare clothes, and the knife. I brought salt. I'd read somewhere it could protect against supernatural things. We weren't taking chances. We left Friday after school, drove Ryan's dad's truck upstate, through the winding roads and foggy hills until we reached the trailhead. It was almost sunset, the same one Josh had taken. There was no going back now. The forest was dead quiet. No birds, no wind, just the crunch of our boots on old leaves and the occasional crake of the trees. Ryan led the way. He'd been here with his family years before, and he still remembered the path. After 2 hours, we found it. The clearing, Josh's old campsite. It looked exactly like the rangers had described. Tent still up, bag unzipped, half-eaten trail mix scattered across a log. Even the flashlight, long dead, lay in the dirt. It looked like it had been abandoned. Yesterday, I crouched beside the log, picked up the trail mix. It wasn't stale, it was fresh. Ryan knelt by the tent. This is impossible. And then we heard it. A whisper, very faint, like leaves brushing together behind us. But it was a voice. He called it, and it answered. We spun around. No one, just trees. And then more whispering, all around us now, like the wind carried voices from every direction. He called it, and it came. Ryan drew the knife. We have to go. But before we could move, something stepped out of the trees. It was Josh, or what looked like Josh. But this time, there was no pretending. His skin was gray, almost translucent. His eyes were pitch black, like twin holes drilled into his skull. His mouth was too wide, his limbs too long. He wasn't even walking. He was gliding across the ground. And he smiled, that awful, inhuman smile. You brought him back to me. The thing said in a voice that sounded like Josh's, but layered with something deeper, like two voices speaking at once. Now I'll bring you down where he went. It reached out a hand. Ryan threw the knife. It struck the creature in the chest. It didn't flinch. It pulled the blade out, looked at the bloodless wound, and dropped it. Then it opened its mouth and screamed. Not a sound, a pressure. Like our ears were going to burst, I fell to my knees, clutching my head. Ryan was screaming, but I couldn't hear him. Then the ground beneath us collapsed. We fell, down into darkness. I don't remember how long we were unconscious, but when I woke up, we were somewhere else, somewhere beneath. I woke up choking on dirt. Ryan was next to me, half buried in dead leaves and rotting roots, groaning. The air was thick down there, musty, damp, and filled with this awful sweet-smelling rot that clung to our throats. We were no longer in the forest. We were under it. A cavern, maybe? Or a tunnel? I couldn't tell. The light was dim, faintly glowing from the moss along the walls like dying embers. But it was enough to see that the ground pulsed slightly, like we were inside something alive. Ryan stirred, coughing. His voice rasped. "Where are we?" I had no answer. All I knew was that the air felt wrong, like it vibrated with every breath, as if the very atmosphere was soaked in something unnatural. We stood up, using each other for support, and started walking. We had no compass, no map, no sense of time, just that horrible instinct that told us we were not alone down there. We walked for what felt like hours. The tunnel twisted and narrowed, sometimes squeezing us sideways. We'd have to crawl through sections so tight it felt like the earth would crush us. Other times it opened into massive chambers where the ceiling stretched high above into black nothingness, and the walls were covered in claw marks, some fresh, some ancient, and always that whispering. It never stopped. Sometimes it was Josh's voice, sometimes it was our own, calling our names, mocking our thoughts. He bled, he screamed, he called to it. I started to hallucinate, or maybe I didn't. I saw flashes, memories, warnings, Ryan screaming underwater, myself lying in a casket, eyes open, Josh laughing with a mouthful of centipedes. But I kept going. So did Ryan, until we found the room. It was massive, a cathedral of stone and bone, skulls embedded in the walls, bones arranged into crude symbols, and in the center, a pit. Not a hole, a living, breathing maw in the earth, pulsing and twitching like a heart made of soil and sinew. It was wide enough to swallow a truck, and something was coming out of it. First, a hand, gray, veined, fingers tipped in black talons. Then a head, Josh's head, twisted and stretched, smiling with too many teeth. But the rest of it wasn't human. It had no torso, just a long rope-like spine, trailing into the darkness below, with twitching limbs and faces sprouting from it, some screaming, others moaning. It was like the forest had birthed something using Josh as a shell. Ryan grabbed a bone from the floor, trembling. "We have to stop it." "How?" I whispered. He didn't answer. He just charged. He swung the bone club down onto the creature's head with everything he had. It shrieked, again with that pressure scream that rattled our bones. The walls pulsed. The pit writhed. But it felt pain this time. The thing recoiled, and that gave me time. I grabbed another bone, this one long and sharpened to a point. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I stabbed it, right into the pit, right into the heart of the forest's mouth. Everything exploded, a blinding white light, a sound like trees screaming, and then silence. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the trail in the Catskills. Daylight, birdsong. Ryan was next to me, unconscious, but breathing. The pit, the cavern, the monster. It was all gone. We were back, but not alone. There were rangers swarming the trail. Apparently, a search party had gone out when we missed our check-in with our parents. They found us unconscious near the trailhead, both of us with scratches and bruises, but otherwise okay. We tried to explain. No one believed us. We didn't blame them. How do you tell someone you fell into the earth and fought a goddamn forest demon wearing your best friend's brother's face? They found Josh's remains a week later. At least, they said it was Josh. The bones matched. Clothes, too. But something about the skull didn't sit right with me. Too long. Too smooth. They closed the case. Another wilderness tragedy. But Ryan and I knew better. We'd seen what came back, and it wasn't over. 3 weeks later, Ryan vanished. No note, no struggle, no signs. Just gone. But that night I got a message on my phone. It was a photo, taken in my bedroom, of me sleeping, and standing over me, Ryan, smiling. Too many teeth. I don't know how else to start this except to say, I'm not the type who believes in ghosts. I've never really been into the supernatural, or conspiracy theories, or any of that creepy pasta stuff people love to share online. I work in real estate, live alone, and for the most part, keep to myself. But last year, something happened in the apartment building where I was living. Something I still can't explain. It started off small, annoying, weird. Then it grew into something that has made it impossible for me to feel safe again. Something real. And I know how that sounds, but please, just listen. Because I think whatever lived in apartment 4C wasn't human. And I don't think it was ever supposed to be here. I moved into the place in March of last year. The building was in Jersey City, close enough to commute to Manhattan for work, and surprisingly cheap for how clean it looked. The rent was low, too low in hindsight, but the agent said the landlord just wanted quiet tenants with stable jobs. Perfect for me. It was a 4-story building, 6 units total. I lived in 3B, a corner unit with big windows and a view of the street. The apartment directly above me, 4C, was supposed to be vacant. The landlord, an old guy named Mr. Costas, told me flat out during the lease signing. Forget 4C, he said. No one lives there. It's under renovation. I didn't question it, but I should have. The first strange thing happened my second night. It was around 1:30 a.m. I was lying in bed scrolling through my phone when I heard heavy footsteps directly above me. Not just walking, pacing, back and forth, slow, deliberate, loud. It went on for nearly 10 minutes. At first I thought maybe someone had moved into 4C and Mr. Costas just didn't tell me. So I emailed him the next morning, casual-like, just asking if there was a new tenant upstairs. He replied within the hour. No one has the key to 4C but me. Still vacant, still locked. That gave me pause. I told myself it was probably just the pipes, or maybe sound from another unit bouncing weirdly through the old floors. I didn't want to believe otherwise. Then came the knocking. About a week later, I was in the kitchen late one night heating up leftovers when I heard this soft, rhythmic knock. Tap, 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 coming from the ceiling. It was faint, like someone using the back of their knuckle right above my light fixture. I froze. It continued for 30 seconds, then stopped. 10 minutes later, it started again. A little louder this time. Tap, tap, tap. This time it didn't stop. It went on for hours. By the third night, it wasn't just knocking anymore. It was whispering. I swear to God, whispering through the vents. It was unintelligible at first, just the sound of breath and wet words sliding along the metal. Then came phrases, barely audible, but enough to make my stomach twist. Don't look up. He's awake now. No mouth, no mouth, no mouth. I didn't sleep at all that night. Just lay there under the covers, phone clutched to my chest, too afraid to move. In the morning, I went upstairs. I had to. The door to 4C was as ordinary as any in the building. Same old brass number plate, same deadbolt. But the air near it, it was freezing. I stood there, hand out, hovering just inches from the doorknob. Something in my chest screamed at me not to touch it. I knocked instead. No answer. So I leaned close enough to put my ear to the wood. And that's when I heard it. Not footsteps, not whispering, breathing, right on the other side, deep, slow, wet. Something alive was in there. Something that shouldn't be. I ran back to my unit and called Mr. Costas. He didn't answer. I left a voicemail, calm at first, then borderline frantic. Told him someone had broken into 4C. That something was in there. He didn't call back. That night, everything escalated. It started at 2:12 a.m. I remember the time because I took a screenshot of my phone's lock screen. I was trying to text my friend Julie when the lights in my apartment flickered and cut out completely. Silence. Then the footsteps returned. Only now. They were inside my own apartment. I swear to God, something walked from my bathroom down the hallway and stopped directly at my bedroom door. I didn't move, didn't breathe. My phone screen lit up. A new notification. I looked down. It was a text from an unknown number. One word. Look. I did. I turned slowly toward the door. It was open, just an inch, just enough to see something gray standing in the hallway. Tall, too tall, and still. It didn't move. It didn't breathe. But I knew it was looking right at me. And then it spoke, not with a voice, but with my voice. You shouldn't have knocked. I don't remember falling asleep that night. I must have passed out from fear or shock, because when I opened my eyes again, the sun was bleeding through the blinds, and my bedroom door was wide open. I stayed in bed for a full 10 minutes, trying to convince myself it was a dream. But when I finally got up, I found 3 wet footprints leading from my bathroom to the doorway. And I don't have carpets. No one had come in. My front door was still locked, chain-latched, deadbolt turned. But those prints were real. Large, barefoot, toes like claws. And the worst part, they stopped at my bedroom. There weren't any leading back out. I took the day off work and went to the landlord's office in person. His building was 2 blocks away in a strip mall above a dentist's office. I'd never actually seen it before. Everything was always done online. The glass door had a simple sign, Costa's Property Management. Inside, the place was cluttered, filled with old filing cabinets and boxes of dusty lease agreements. The receptionist, a tired woman who looked like she hadn't blinked in an hour, told me Mr. Costas was out of town. I asked when he'd be back. She looked at the calendar, then at me. He hasn't been back since March. That didn't make sense. I'd signed my lease in April. I told her about the noises from 4C, the breathing, the voice. She looked like she wanted to say something, but changed her mind. Instead, she walked to one of the filing cabinets, flipped through a drawer, and pulled out a manila folder. She handed it to me. This is 4C's file. I opened it. The papers inside were all handwritten. No lease, no tenant agreement. Just a sheet of yellow legal paper with 6 words scribbled in jagged black ink. Do not rent. Do not open. The last entry on the page was dated 1993. And beneath it, in red, he's still there. I left the office, shaking. I didn't go home. I couldn't. Instead, I called Julie, my only real friend in the city, and asked if I could crash at her place for the night. I didn't explain why. I didn't need to. She could hear it in my voice. When I got to her apartment, I showed her the picture of the footprints. She stared at them for a long time before saying, "You need to move out." I nodded, but it wasn't that simple. Back at my place the next morning, something had changed. The smell hit me the moment I opened the door. Rotten meat, damp earth, something sour and metallic, like old coins soaked in vinegar. I followed it to the hallway and stopped dead. My bedroom door had been scratched, deep long claw marks gouged into the wood. 4 vertical slashes, each one about a foot long, tearing through the paint and down to the grain. It looked like something with talons had tried to get in. Or maybe out. On the floor was a single object, a tooth, human, small, brown around the edges. I packed a bag and left. I didn't break the lease, didn't ask for my deposit back. I just left. A week later, I was crashing on Julie's couch, still trying to get my head right, when she sat me down and said something I'll never forget. "I went to your building." I stared at her. "You what?" She looked pale, shaking a little. "I don't know why. I was just curious. I went during the day. I walked up to the 4th floor and stood outside 4C. I didn't say anything. Something's wrong with that apartment. The walls around the door were wet, like sweating, and I could hear something behind it." Her voice broke. It was saying your name. I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing tapping, even from her apartment. Tap, tap, tap. I told myself it couldn't follow me. I told myself that. But then came the dreams. Or, if I'm being honest, the visits. I'd wake up and see it. The gray thing. The one from my hallway. It never moved. It just stood in the corner of the room, watching. Its skin looked like concrete, soaked in ink. Long limbs, no face. Just a hollow groove where the mouth should have been. Every time I woke up, it would still be there, closer. The last time, I swear it whispered something before vanishing. Not in English, not in any language I've ever heard, but the sound of it made me bleed from the nose. Julie begged me to talk to someone, a priest, a medium, a psychic. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It all felt like a bad movie, until I got the phone call, unknown number, dead static for 20 seconds, then just one sentence, in my own voice. 4C is open. I dropped the phone, literally dropped it. It clattered to the floor and skidded under Julie's coffee table. She wasn't home. She'd gone to work early that day, and I just stood there, heart jackhammering, staring at the spot where it had fallen. I didn't want to pick it up. I didn't want to hear it ring again, because I just knew, if I answered it one more time, I wouldn't be the one speaking on the other end. Whatever was in 4C had gotten into my voice. Whatever it was, it wanted to wear me. I didn't go back to my place. I didn't even go back to pick up the rest of my stuff. Julie offered to go with me and get it, but I said no. Honestly, I don't know if I even remembered how to get there anymore. My memory of that building, of the whole street, had started to rot like old fruit. I could remember the fear, the smell, the shape of the footprints, but not the address. It was like the apartment itself was erasing the part of me that had ever known it. That thing in 4C was pulling pieces of me back to it. A week passed. 2. I started staying in a motel. Julie insisted I couldn't stay on her couch forever, and I didn't blame her. I was barely sleeping, eating less, jumping at every knock on the door. The guy at the front desk, some 60-something dude who spent most of his shift watching reality shows on a cracked iPad, started calling me twitchy. Every night the nightmares came, but worse than the dreams were the visits. One night, I remember it exactly because it was the first time I tried Ambien. I woke up to the sound of breathing again, not in the room, under the bed, slow, labored, wet. I didn't move. I couldn't. My muscles were locked like cement. It went on for hours. I know that sounds impossible, but I swear on everything. I just lay there, listening to it draw each terrible, painful breath, like it was trying to hold on to life one gasp at a time. And when it finally stopped, I felt something crawl out from under me. It slid out and whispered, "Come back. I never let you go." That was the first time I seriously considered suicide. I know how that sounds, but I need to be honest. There's something psychologically corrosive about being targeted by something you can't explain, can't see fully, and can't escape. Something that knows your name. Something that speaks with your voice. It's not like in movies. There's no adrenaline rush, no sudden clarity, just decay. Mental, emotional, spiritual decay. I wasn't losing my mind. I was losing my identity. I booked a room under a fake name at a different motel across town. Wore a hoodie, paid cash. Still, the thing found me. I know because one morning, when I opened the nightstand drawer, there was something inside it that I'd left back at my old apartment. My key to 4C, wrapped in a damp paper towel, teeth marks on the brass, and a single long strand of hair wrapped around the teeth. The strand was gray, and it wasn't mine. I tried reaching out to the property manager again. No answer. So I hired a private investigator, some ex-cop named Riggs, I found online, who specialized in unusual circumstances. I paid him a ridiculous sum to look into the history of the building. I told him I believed the unit I'd lived in was involved in something criminal. I left out the supernatural stuff at first. Didn't want to scare him off. 3 days later, he called me at 4 a.m. His voice was shaking. "It's not just you," he said. "I found police reports. 4 tenants who lived in that unit since 1980 have gone missing. 2 were institutionalized. 1 burned himself alive in the lobby." I sat straight up. Why didn't I find any of this online? Because all the records were sealed by the city. Buried. Someone didn't want this getting out. I asked him what he planned to do. He hung up. That was the last I ever heard from Riggs. When I called his number the next day, it had been disconnected. Julie found him 2 weeks later. She'd been trying to help behind my back, running searches, making calls, even driving to his last known address. She found his car abandoned in an alley near the edge of town. Inside the glove box was a recorder. I begged her not to listen to it, but she did. She only made it 30 seconds in before she threw it into a river. She said it wasn't his voice on the tape. It was mine. I knew then that it wasn't just trying to torment me. It was trying to become me. And the only way I could stop it was to confront it one last time. It took everything I had to return to that building. I didn't recognize the street at first. It was like it had aged 50 years since I'd last seen it. The pavement was cracked. The buildings around it had boarded windows. The air smelled like mildew and smog. But the building itself, it looked exactly the same. Frozen in time. Like it had never aged a day. The front door was unlocked. I walked through the lobby and found myself staring at the elevator. The buttons were missing. The RP light was smeared with something that looked like dried blood. So I took the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last. Not metaphorically, I mean physically. Like something didn't want me going back up there. Like gravity was thicker on that floor. By the time I got to the 4th landing, I was drenched in sweat. 4C was right in front of me. The door was open. Inside, the apartment was empty. Not just of furniture, of reality. It was gray, flat. The walls looked like they were painted in ashes. The air was still, but not quiet. It hummed with an unnatural vibration, like the static between radio stations. And then I saw it, standing in the corner. Same shape, same color, same absence of features, but this time it moved. It turned toward me, and I felt it, like a tide crashing over my soul. I wasn't looking at a ghost. I was looking at myself. It stepped forward. I didn't. It raised its arms. So did I. It opened its mouth, and I felt mine start to do the same. Then, somewhere, deep in my chest, I heard her voice. "Julie, you need to move out." It snapped me back. I screamed. The thing recoiled. The walls around it started to melt. Literally melt, dripping like wax under a blowtorch. Behind the melting drywall, I saw faces, hundreds of them, pressed against the surface, mouths open, screaming. Tenants, victims, people like me. Some of them were me. I turned and ran. I didn't stop until I was outside. lungs on fire, throat raw from screaming. The building didn't follow, but something inside me did. That was 2 years ago. I've moved 7 times since, changed my name, got a new job, new city. But every now and then when I look in the mirror, just for a second, I swear I see its reflection instead of mine. Just staring, waiting, like it never left 4C, like it never needed to, because now 4C is in me.